You die tonight. Not in a nightmare, not in a metaphor, in a real, documented medical event. Your heart stops, your brain goes quiet, and every system in your body powers down. And then something happens that science has spent decades trying to explain away and cannot. You come back. And the first thing you say is that death felt like a door. This is not a religious claim. It is not a hallucination theory. It is a pattern that shows up across thousands of documented near-death experiences, across cultures, across centuries, across people who had never heard of each other. And it points towards something that modern physics is only now beginning to take seriously. What if death is not an ending? What if it is a transition to the version of you that survived? Your brain is not a simple machine. You already know this. But what you probably do not know is that your brain operates at its deepest level in a domain where the normal rules of reality start to bend. In 1989, physicist Roger Penrose published a theory that consciousness is not produced by classical computation in the brain. It is produced by quantum processes inside structures called microtubules, tiny protein tubes inside every neuron. His collaborator, anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, spent the next 3 decades building the experimental case for this idea. They called it orchestrated objective reduction, ORC-OR. And what it implies is staggering. If your consciousness is quantum in nature, it does not simply stop when your brain stops. Quantum information cannot be destroyed. This is not philosophy. This is one of the most rigorously tested laws in all of physics. Information that enters a quantum system must in some form persist. It can transform, it can scatter, but it cannot vanish. So the question is not whether your consciousness survives death. The question is where it goes. Think about what you already know about quantum mechanics. You know that a particle, before it is observed, does not occupy a single position. It exists in superposition, smeared across multiple possible states simultaneously. It is only when observation collapses the wave function that one outcome becomes real. One path is chosen. But here is the part that gets almost no attention in popular science. The other paths do not disappear. According to the many worlds interpretation, first proposed by physicist Hugh Everett in 1957, every possible outcome of every quantum event branches into its own real physical universe. Not metaphorically, physically. The universe splits, and both versions are equally real. Every second of your life, the universe is branching around you, and in most of those branches, you are still alive. Now bring those two ideas together. Quantum consciousness, many worlds. If your mind is a quantum system, and quantum systems branch at every decision point, then somewhere in the vast structure of branching realities, there is always a version of you that did not die. There is always a branch where the car swerved in time, where the diagnosis came back clean, where the fall did not happen. And if consciousness is the information that cannot be destroyed, then perhaps what we call death is simply the moment when your awareness finds the branch where you survived. Physicist Max Tegmark at MIT has called this the quantum immortality hypothesis. It is deeply controversial. It is also deeply consistent with the mathematics. But you do not need a physics degree to feel the weight of what this means. Think about the last time you had a near miss, a car that almost hit you, a step you almost missed in the dark. In the moment after, you felt something strange, not just relief, but a kind of vertigo, a sense that something shifted, that you were, somehow, in a slightly different place than you were a second before. Most people dismiss this feeling as adrenaline, but what if it is something older than that? What if your nervous system, wired over millions of years of survival, has a dim, wordless awareness that a branching just occurred, that you just crossed a threshold? Ancient cultures encoded this intuition in almost every mythology ever recorded. The Egyptian Book of the Dead describes death as a passage through the duat, not a void, but a structured landscape through which the soul must navigate to reach another version of existence. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Bardo Thadal, describes the moment of death as a recognition, the soul confronting a dazzling light and choosing whether to merge with it or to re-enter a new life. Norse mythology speaks of warriors who die in battle going to Valhalla, not a heaven of rest, but an active physical world where they continue to exist and fight. Almost universally, ancient humans did not believe in annihilation. They believed in transition. And they were not primitive for thinking this. They may have been picking up on something real. Researcher Pim van Lommel, a Dutch cardiologist, conducted one of the most rigorous clinical studies of near-death experiences ever performed. Published in The Lancet in 2001, his study followed 344 cardiac arrest survivors who were resuscitated after clinically flatlining. 18% reported clear, verifiable near-death experiences, not vague dreams, but structured, coherent accounts of leaving their bodies, observing medical procedures from above, passing through a tunnel, encountering light. Some reported conversations with deceased relatives they had no way of knowing were dead. The accounts were detailed, they were consistent, and they occurred during periods when the brain showed no measurable electrical activity. Van Lommel's conclusion was careful and scientific. He said the data suggested that consciousness is not produced by the brain, it is received by the brain. Like a radio receiver picking up a signal, the brain does not generate your mind, it tunes into it. And when the hardware fails, the signal does not stop. If that is true, then what you call yourself, your memories, your fears, your loves, the specific texture of how it feels to be you, is not locked inside your skull. It is a pattern, a quantum pattern, one that the universe, in its branching architecture, cannot simply delete. Now here is the part that changes everything you thought you knew about grief. When someone you love dies, you feel their absence like a wound. You reach for them in your mind and find nothing. This is one of the most painful experiences a human being can have. But what if their absence is local? What if, from the perspective of the quantum structure of reality, they did not disappear? They simply stepped through a door that you cannot yet see. What if, in the branch of the universe most continuous with their consciousness, they are still alive, still thinking, still somehow moving forward? This is not a comfort invented to soften grief. This is what the physics, taken seriously, actually implies. Researcher Sam Parnia at NYU Langone Medical Center has spent years studying what he calls the AWARE study, a clinical investigation of awareness during resuscitation. His patients consistently describe a clarity of consciousness during cardiac arrest that should be impossible given the state of their brain. They describe not confusion, but lucidity, not darkness, but light, not endings, but openings. Parnia does not dismiss these accounts. He calls them evidence of a post-cardiac arrest consciousness that deserves serious scientific investigation. And the scientific community, slowly, reluctantly, is beginning to agree. Your brain has always known something that your rational mind refuses to accept. You are not afraid of death because you believe in annihilation. You are afraid because somewhere, beneath every thought you have ever had, there is a wordless knowing that you are something that cannot simply stop. The dread is not about ending. It is about the threshold, about the not knowing, about the door and what is on the other side. But here is what the evidence, the physics, the ancient records, and the clinical accounts all point toward. The door does not lead to nothing. It leads to the version of you that survived. So tonight, when you lie down and close your eyes, and your brain cycles through its nightly rehearsal of unconsciousness, that quiet, temporary surrender that has always felt faintly like a small death, notice what happens on the other side of it. You wake up. You always wake up. You are always, somehow, still here. Maybe that is not an accident. Maybe that is the oldest truth your body has always known, and science is only now finding the language to explain it. You die tonight, and somewhere in the branching architecture of everything that exists, you also survive.